Well, we are back. We love technical difficulties because you know what? We're teachers, and this is what happens. Sometimes we gotta pivot. But let me wait till we have more
Yes,
folks.
we've got folks coming back. Thank you for being patient. Unfortunately, technology happens, but as Carissa has said, we are teachers and we know how to pivot and make things work. So we're back to about 97, 100. So the numbers are climbing back again, Carissa. So it looks like we're back in business.
Okay. Well, wait. We apologize for those coming back in. I got kicked out too. But as we were saying, we're teachers, and sometimes we gotta pivot when you have your first grader and they're like, "Mrs. Snyder, a butterfly," and you're like, "Oh my gosh, no!" Or the spiders in your room. Um, what we were saying before is that we have stop rules and gating rules, which after you've given these assessments, here is where you can get that overall composite score to see if the student is at risk or not at risk. But thanks for coming back. I know some folks are joining us. And then on the opposite end, when we're showing students who have shown proficiency of some of our prerequisite skills, we have stop or gating rules designed to save you time for needless testing. So in that scenario, it's going to be grayed out like this, but underneath it, you would get to see where it says tested out. Moving into after you've given this assessment, and now we want to conduct more frequent progress monitoring. Here is what that is going to show, because mCLASS is going to recommend a most relevant measure based off of an item level analysis within mCLASS. So when you pull your first grader back, you can see here that we have recommended letter sounds to really prioritize. I can come down here on my grade level, the different measures, and then looking at correct letter sounds would be the one that I would want to start progress monitoring first. I would click on, in a very similar experience, would be just like that in mCLASS Lectura within progress monitoring, where you would come and you would see the flexibility of having and getting the option to either progress monitor that recommended measure or other measures that you can still progress monitor within that grade level. Common questions that we typically get here are, can you progress monitor off grade level? And you can progress monitor off grade level. You'll just go to the grade level over here and then look at the different form and that measure that you're wanting to progress monitor. We're going to switch gears, and Anna's going to go into, after we have all this information within mCLASS, we want to look at the different reports, and just know that mCLASS is going to have a variety of different reports, whether that's looking at your classroom reports and getting deeper insights and snapshots, or you want to make sure you're communicating this into caregiver reports. And then of course, leaders are going to have a variety of different reports. So Anna, take it away.
Well, thank you, Carissa. I think we've got most folks back and super excited about being able to join us again. I want to thank my amazing colleague for Carissa for really level setting, giving us all the information and a nice, really nice high level overview of what mCLASS is, what those skills are that are tested. I know we're getting some questions in chat and we're having folks answer those. So thank you so much for your interest. So now we're going to take it a step further and look at the reporting side of the mCLASS platform and the robust reporting that you are going to have. So with that, let's take a look here. What you're seeing now, and one of the things that Carissa has really laid out really nicely is that mCLASS, and for anyone who was wondering what does mCLASS mean, that means mobile classroom. I know we've been using that acronym and throwing it out there, but for anyone who who wanted to know what mCLASS stood for, that just means mobile classroom. So our mobile classroom platform assesses in two languages. As you saw with mCLASS DIBELS 8, that is our English assessment, and mCLASS Lectura is our Spanish. And what you're seeing now is how that platform captures what students know in both languages. That is something that I love to spotlight on all calls that I have with customers, especially on webinars, is that we're able to capture what students know in both languages. What you're seeing now is an example of an assessment in mCLASS DIBELS 8 and mCLASS Lectura as we look at the skill of phonological awareness. So the teacher and the student experience, as Carissa mentioned, is very consistent, but it is respective of language. And I think you've heard her say that term quite a bit throughout our presentation as we look at each language to be unique. So on the left, we've got DIBELS 8. We see that phoneme segmentation, and that measures capturing the students segmenting first into phonemes. What you're seeing on the right-hand side, we have mCLASS Lectura, where it's going to measure that same skill, but it's called the syllabic segmentation, fluidez en las segmentaciones de sílabas. So it's going to capture the student segmenting the word húmedo into syllables. Another thing that is super impactful and powerful about our mCLASS platform is what we love to call our dual language report. And Carissa and I always get really excited about sharing this with you. We wish we had confetti and a cumbia and salsa song, because this is like the power of mCLASS. Having this dual language report allows educators to have an overall literacy picture of students that speak, our multilingual learners, our English learners. So what you're seeing now is Gabriel's biliteracy journey. So we're looking at his entire overall literacy picture through a very asset-based lens of this dual language report. What will you receive with this dual language report? You will have side-by-side views of English and Spanish skills. So what you're seeing now is a dual language report of a student named Gabriel, and he is a native Spanish speaker. This dual language report is going to give that side-by-side view of his performance in English and in Spanish, not separate. It's a whole report with both languages so that you're able to leverage the assets that that student knows in their native language, so it could be leveraged over into the language that they are acquiring. So not only will you have side-by-side views, and as we both, as we all know, and Carissa and I are very data-driven folk, data is where it begins, but we also need to know how to use the data. So you will also have what I like to call embedded PD. So you will have literally embedded in our platform what we call our cross-linguistic instructional guidance. So based on his skills and assets, the teacher's going to be able to receive, give that student some guidance on what that, we're going to give that teacher guidance on what that student needs and how to grow his literacy in both English and in Spanish. That's going to include instructional activities and specific activities. So what Gabriel knows in Spanish can be leveraged to help his support in English literacy development. Again, this aspect of using mCLASS with DIBELS 8th edition and mCLASS Lectura is extremely powerful. Now, let's talk about the reports that Carissa mentioned. There will be teacher reports, there will be administrative reports, and also reports for caregivers. In my opinion, that is the complete piece of the educational process for students. The teacher, admin also knowing what to do to support teachers and caregivers as well. So what you're seeing now is an example of a teacher report. As a teacher, you want to be able to determine class level skill and what students need. So this benchmark skills overview report is classroom-wide view of overall reading performance for your entire class. And as a former interventionist, this is magical. I had to do this by hand and create my own spreadsheet. And unfortunately, I didn't color code as well. So as you can see, amazing color coding. Teachers can use this report to make some determinations if composite scores improved, if they've declined, or remained the same each semester. Very important report for teachers. Along with that, and I've seen some questions about the risk indicator and how do you get it? How do you identify which students need additional support? So mCLASS is also going to provide very user-friendly teacher reports. What you're seeing now is an example, and this report is called Class Results Table. And it is available in our platform for both assessment programs, for both English and Spanish. So this report is going to allow teachers to see each student's performance on each subset, as well as their overall composite, and have the ability to sort. So all of the columns are going to be sortable, very, very user-friendly, so that you're able to analyze the data that is in front of you. So in addition to that, the platform is also going to identify students who are at risk. And as Charissa mentioned, for reading disabilities that include dyslexia. And this is going to be based on results from RAN and or results from spelling. Typically, the recommendation is if you've got students who are well below in composite, recommendation is we advise you to actually test those students using the RAND measure and or spelling. And if those students also score well below in those particular subset areas, then those are students who are going to be flagged and have that risk indicator in our platform. An at-risk indicator mark which students are at risk, and it looks like an exclamation part right here. So I saw that question in chat, and I hope I answered that for you. What else will you receive, teachers? And this is something back in the day, I'm a former DIBELS user with my students, and I used to I had the booklets, and I would have my ruler and create this particular report for every single student. So how do you want to monitor that student growth towards those goals? So another useful report is this progress monitoring report, which is going to allow you the opportunity to review those students' benchmark scores, also their progress monitoring scores for the whole entire year. And what you're going to see, each of those skills is going to be shown in a separate report, and it's going to allow you as educators to determine if the student is making progress toward those goals. And allow you to make any decisions on how you should be differentiating for those students if necessary. Now, we take it a step further. What can we instantly do as far as instruction? And so as Charissa even started this webinar, this platform is more than just assessing. It's progress monitoring, and it's also instruction. So how do we provide you that? So here's an example of the group instructional report, which is a part of mCLASS DIBELS 8 and also mCLASS Lectura. It's an instructional tool that's going to automatically group students, which I would spend hours doing. It's going to let you see the patterns, response patterns of students and teachers. You will be able to see that. Each group is associated with one main skill. You'll see right now, what you're seeing is a group of actually a pair, Samir and Leah. They are actually in a group for phonemic awareness. And as you can see here, there's lots of guidance that's going to be provided to you in order for you to work with your students. Additionally, I always like to point out too, as a person in the biliteracy space and also the multilingual learner space, you will also see language considerations. What about our English language learners? How can we, what guidance can we give you as teachers as you're administering these measures? In addition to that, we also want to include our caregivers. So we also have some family-friendly reports for those caregivers that you will be able to actually print or even send digitally for English and in Spanish. So you'll have the capability of printing them in both languages. So teachers, you can download what is known as the Home Connect letter. That's what it's known at in DIBELS 8th edition, in mCLASS Lectura. It is La Carta de Apoyo. And this not only gives the data on that student. Why was that student tested? What were the outcomes of, and what were the results of those specific subset tests? These letters also describe those measures in each assessment program that relates to their skill development. But we take it a step further. We also provide these activities that caregivers can actually do with these students. A lot of times caregivers say, okay, the data is great, but how can I support my student in order to enable them to accelerate their learning in their area of need? So these caregiver reports, these Home Connect activities also support that child's skill development. We also provide our caregivers with a Home Connect site, and that's going to provide them with additional activities for those families to choose and help to reinforce and practice those critical skills. And you have this en inglés y también en español, so you also have this in Spanish. We also want to provide our administrators, our leaders, with actionable data in order to support teachers so that they're able to support their students. What you will have is what's called a robust reporting analysis suite that is going to be provided in our mCLASS platform. So mCLASS is going to provide you with this reporting analysis suite, which is known as RAS. The reports from RAS can assist school leaders, administrators, in planning for additional resources, providing additional support for teachers, and also determining the effectiveness of the instruction that's happening at school. So with that, I am showing you now, like, how can leaders pinpoint instructional needs across your school? And the report that I'm showing you is known as the Comparing Measures report. So this report allows analysis of how one group of students perform, and leaders can see that actionable data of how each, how students achieved a specific performance level on each of those measures. I didn't want to leave the leaders out. I wanted you to know that you're also part of this conversation. So our goal today, Carissa and I had a goal. The goal is to show you that mCLASS is more than just assessment. mCLASS and mCLASS Lectura, we have that assessment platform within mCLASS, but we also wanted to spotlight the reporting features that mCLASS has for caregivers, for teachers, as well as for leaders. And finally, what I like to always spotlight is the instruction that is embedded that aligns to what those students need. We know that you're going to walk away with questions. And we know that there are questions that we know that you folks will leave and say, I've got a couple of questions. And so Carissa and I have kind of the top 3 questions that we get asked. And we want to make sure that we provide you some quick answers for those before our webinar ends for today.
Yes, and thank you so much, Anna, for going through all those great reports. I saw that Shannon, as well as other folks at Amplify, are really helping with answer some of those questions. One of them I wanted to answer that was directly in the chat is mCLASS is approved for the California screener for your SB 114 laws, going in kind of deeper for the different reports. So you are covered there in the beautiful state of California. And then turning to some of these kind of fan favorites on some of the questions we typically see is when we're rostering students, does it work well with platforms like single sign-ons and Clever and ClassLink? And guess what? It does work very well with them. I was a former Clever user and really easy to see all of the students there. Some questions that I typically get as well is who should be giving the mCLASS DIBELS 8th or mCLASS Lectura assessment, and Anna will go deeper into for Lectura. But for DIBELS 8th edition, it's really going to be those who are trained, and it is going to be first and foremost. We have a variety of different professional development options, whether that is going through on-site training. Maybe you're someone who likes this, more of a virtual space, or you know a lot about DIBELS or mCLASS and you want to learn on your own with asynchronous learning. It's going to be the first kind of answer to that. And then part B to it is what we typically see as best practice is a classroom teacher would be whomever, so they can see their understanding of their class. But we've seen a variety of different people giving the assessment. Sometimes it's instructional coaches. Sometimes it is different reading specialists, just honestly someone who has been trained in mCLASS DIBELS 8, so you know how to give the assessment, and then of course looking at some of the different reports. And then Anna, I'll pass it to you on the last question is, who should assess Lectura?
Now, and similar to what Carissa went through with mCLASS DIBELS 8, obviously we do find that best practice is that classroom teacher so that they can be aware of those classroom reports, but also as a former interventionist, an interventionist, even a para, as long as they're trained. But a caveat to mCLASS Lectura, and believe it or not, this is a question that I get often, Anna, does a person that administers the mCLASS Lectura measures need to be able to speak Spanish? And the answer is yes. The answer is anyone who is going to be administering the mCLASS Lectura measures needs to have a Spanish level of proficiency to be able to, obviously, read the examples, any instructions, and also be able to assess that student in Spanish. Does that person need to be of native speaker level? No. but that person administering does have to have a level and proficiency of Spanish to be able to administer the measures, read the instructions, and also read those examples. And that is a question that I get asked. So I did, Carissa and I wanted to make sure that we answered that question here at this webinar as well. We were so with that said, and with the hiccup of the technology, we are so glad that you all came back and kind of giving us that little forgiveness of the tech issue. So thank you so much for coming back. And I know that XJ is about to jump back on and close us out today.
Yes, thank you both for an incredible session. It's the best working with educators and former educators because you know how to pivot and know how to work when technology, doesn't work on your side. Thank you all for joining us to dive into mCLASS and mCLASS Lectura. Don't forget, we have another webinar next week, Connecting the Dots, assessment, intervention, and Tier 1 instruction that focuses on connecting mCLASS to Amplify's full literacy suite. I'll drop that in the link below. And thank you all so much for joining us, and hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and a wonderful rest of your week. Take care, everyone.